So here I am. Okay, take two. So here I am at the point in the race when my focus is temporarily drawn, inevitably, away from my nephew Travis. For just a moment, I'm reluctant at first and perhaps a bit guilt-ridden as well, but eventually I start to look a little further down the trail. And it isn't long before I give in to the wave of excitement and anticipation that is building around the front of the pack as I look to the last few miles and the identity of the leader. But wait, more exciting to me than the identity of the leader are the stories that follow. Those that are following close on the heels of the leader, their identities and their strategies, their superhuman efforts to overcome the odds, to dare to attempt to win despite the seemingly inevitable outcome, for me, those are the people who are writing the story of Iditarod 2014. Every race has a winner, and as well, every race has many that might have won, and they are the best at what they do, each of them doing everything in their power to be in position, to believe in destiny, to be at the ready, to be able to take immediate advantage of any and all opportunities that come their way in order to be better than the best and against all odds, win the Iditarod. I must add here that I'm looking forward to the day, also inevitable, that watching the leaders and keeping track of loved ones participating in the race is but one action. Perhaps someday soon we will all be watching as Travis overtakes the former leader Wade in his effort to stay ahead of Sarah. But for now I must shift my attention from one to the other, and so back, or forward rather, we go. Actually, I just realized, to tell this story I do have to go back after all. Back to Iditarod 2013. I was an Ally fan then, for two reasons. She was trailing the leader at that time, during the last few miles of the race, and I always root for the underdog. And the second reason was that the leader was a CV. I had unreasonable expectations that stemmed from a faith that anything could happen. And you know what? Occasionally it does. I was in Nome and rooting for Ally to win it all when I asked Sarah her opinion, hoping to gain energy and faith from her optimism, as she too was an Ally supporter. But what she told me was cold, hard, calculating fact that almost destroyed my unrealistic faith. She said something like, "I know both of their teams, and Mitch is going to win." It was at that point that I turned away from Sarah and toward my sister, who I figured knew little about either team, and asked her to accompany me down the coast a ways, in order to be the first to greet the winner as she, or he, approached Nome. After gathering my many bags of video gear, along with dozens of protein bars, just in case, we climbed aboard my borrowed snowmobile and headed southeast, out of town and onto the frozen Bering Sea ice, making our way into unknown territory, which can be a rare thing to do these days, what with smartphones, GPS, and Google Earth. A part of that unknown territory was the snowmobile itself. Having left Alaska many years before as an ANSI youth, I never had the opportunity to learn how one might even begin to drive such a mechanization. But I learned from the year before that it can be a good idea to at least Google a contraption and its fundamentals before attempting to ride it. At that time, I was looking to purchase the biggest motorcycle that I could find for an online profile picture. Sure, in the first few pictures, I wasn't even sitting on it properly, but after a while it grew on me, and I eventually was the only one in motorcycle riding camp to have a perfect score in both the written exam and the road test. I'm not bragging, just merely trying to make up for the first time I went to meet a seller and to look at his bike. It never dawned on me that I would have to do more than look, and so when he went to start it and asked me to hold in the clutch, I almost died with embarrassment. In front of my dad, no less. So anyway, I was asking around Nome for a snowmobile, and someone said that I could use theirs. All I had to do was go with them immediately to get it up and running. This time around, though, I knew better, and I headed for the restroom first. Once there, I just Googled snowmobiling for dummies. And that was that. I was ready. But was my sister? Soon we had managed to find our way through the icy streets of Nome, over the seawall, and onto the sea ice itself. It was exhilarating. I had experienced nothing like it in my lifetime. Flying through the dark of night, on a strange device, with just a few feet of ice between us and the deadly subarctic sea, I felt as alive as ever. And the surrealistic scene wrapped its stillness around us until all I could hear was my own heartbeat. It was then that the screaming started. Quickly bringing the machine to a halt, I turned, fearing what I would see next. "What's wrong?" I practically screamed back at her. "Oh, nothing," my sister said. "I was just enjoying myself." After a time, we found ourselves so far away from Nome that all signs of civilization vanished. We pulled over and positioned ourselves along the trail, awaiting the winner of Iditarod 2013. I wrapped one of my 3D camcorders in hand warmers and placed it on the other side of the trail, looking back toward us. I held the other one inside my jacket, attempting to shield it from the cold that could suck the energy from its batteries in seconds. Luckily, we did not have long to wait, and although the footage was stolen during a recent break-in, I had the opportunity to view it many times, and it was spectacular. Off in the distance, almost as dark as the night itself, an object was bounding toward us. Unlike the typical musher that we had expected, this entity carried no light, and it was closing fast. My sister was out in front of the snowmobile, and she started to back up, attempting to put something, anything it seemed, between her and the unknown thing hurtling through the darkness toward us, intent unknown. As she neared my position at the back of the machine, she turned and whispered, "Is that a bear?" Now, many times over the years, as an amateur wildlife videographer, I have recklessly charged after bears into the brush, attempting to get the shot. This was different, though. This time it was charging at us. Panic tried to overtake me, but I remained calm enough to foolishly come to the conclusion that my tripod would make a good weapon. I clumsily attempted to release it from the rest of the gear still tied to the sled, and after what seemed like an eternity, I finally pulled it free, just in time to put my camera on it and catch an amazing shot. There, out of the darkness and into our view, came something even more unsettling than a charging bear, and I caught it all on tape. It was a CV. It was Mitch, and he was going to win the Iditarod. So now, fast forward to 2014, and again, I have a reason to cling to an unrealistic faith that Allie can somehow still pull this off and win the Iditarod for the first time. Every year since 1998, Allie has raced either the Yukon Quest International Sled Dog Race or the Iditarod. She has reached the finish line every time. In the year 2000, Allie won the Yukon Quest, the world's toughest sled dog race. Following that win, she switched her focus to the Iditarod and has completed the last great race 13 consecutive years. Her best finishes in the Iditarod are 2 second places in 2012 and 2013. So there you have it. I respect and like Jeff King, and he is out in front by a great margin. Yet I root for Allie Zirkle and hope for a miracle. And hot on their trail, the 2 CV champions, among others. This promises to be an amazing finish. Well, looks like King is about 3 miles outside of safety, so I'd better start paying attention. Looks like he'll be the winner after all, but anything can happen, and occasionally it does.